Hello, guys. This is the video for Wednesday, April 15th. So, some of you, if you're working, maybe it's payday. Some of us, it's payday. It's also the original due date, the original deadline for filing your income taxes. However, that was extended for 90 days. So, if you've not done that yet, you have a 90-day grace period now to get your income tax done. And remember, we need you to file your income taxes so we can calculate GDP correctly. I'm kidding about the GDP correctly thing, but um, so today I'm going to go over the retest here in a minute, the answers for each part of it, and then thank you guys for answering what you want to go over more of. So what I'm going to do is take all your responses for what macro concepts you want to go over a little more of, and I'm going to put together a Quizlet or something for that, and I will post that probably on Friday because it's not really going to be an assignment, and then that's what I'll talk about on Friday, and we'll go over everything. For tomorrow also, I'm going to go ahead and post this. This is the 2010 macroeconomic test, the last one they released, multiple choice one. And it also reviews all the graphs. So I went ahead and put all this on here with all the graphs and everything. So loanable funds market, explaining how it works. Expansionary fiscal policy, show the aggregate supply, demand, long run, how all that works. Okay. Contractionary fiscal policy, expansionary monetary policy, contractionary monetary policy, shifting the demand, money demand curves, and then how interest rates work. All right. So all that's on there. And then it's all the questions that were asked. All right. So there were 4 questions from the basic concepts, circular flow, 2 about PPC, 1 about price floor, 7 questions about global trade. That won't be on this year's test because that was part of what they cut, that last unit. So you won't have to worry about foreign exchange and the balance of payments and trade. 4 questions about GDP, inflation and unemployment. So there were, there were 4 questions about GDP, 2 about inflation, 3 about unemployment, 1 about the business cycle, economic growth, 4 questions. And then you can see why I said unit 3 is what I really feel like they're going to ask one of the free response about. It was 11 questions about aggregate supply, aggregate demand. That's the big part of this one. 4 questions about fiscal policy, which is also unit 3. So there was really 15 questions from unit 3. Unit 4, the banking, there were 11 questions from that. Oh, actually, and Phillips curve actually goes up here too. So there was actually 17 questions from unit 3, right? So I know there were several people that wanted more explanation about the Phillips curve. So I'll put together an explanation on the Phillips curve, and I'll get that posted as well. But so this was the test. So if you will, let me present it here. So if you go through it, it's going to just ask you the questions. The numbers in percentage, the percentage out here was the number of students that got this question right on this year's test. Right. So the diagram below, so over here to the right, because the diagram below shows a linear production possibilities curve for a country. If the economy is currently producing 10 units of good A and 90 units of good B, the opportunity cost of producing the production of good A from 10 units to 20 units is how many units of good B. So remember, since it's a straight line, the opportunity cost is always 10, or always the same. So it's going to be 10, right? So if we go from 100 to 90 and it costs me 10, it's going to always cost me 10. Next question is about circular flow. So just go through and see if you can answer these. This is not something that's got to be turned in. It's just to help you out. And then you can see which questions were the hardest questions. You don't have to do the global trade part because that's been cut. Sorry, this part has not been cut. Comparative advantage, that's still going to be part on there, but foreign exchange will not be. Inflation, comparative advantage, right? So just think about anything that's foreign exchange, current account, that's not on there. Comparative advantage, inflation, that could be. Okay. Direct foreign investment, that's not going to be because that's that last unit that got cut. right? So you can kind of go through and figure out and look over the questions that are gonna be asked. All right, and then all the graphs, or except Phillips curve, are on at the beginning here, and I'll put together a Phillips curve review and get that posted to you guys. All right, so Unit 4, the retest. Did it as an FRQ, told you could use your notes, open note, open book, just like everything else. So I'm filming this right now. It's 3 o'clock. 22 people have turned it in. Remember, well, you're not going to see this, so never mind. I'm going to say you have until 5 o'clock, but this won't be posted until after the time is done for the test. But I did send a reminder, so hopefully you guys get that. All right, so the first question number 1, you're using the money market graph, which is right here. So using the graph of the money market, explain what will be the impact of a Federal Reserve decision to buy $100 billion of bonds on the market. Explain what will happen in the graph with this Fed action. Which curve will shift? What will happen to the interest rates? So the Fed buying $100 billion worth of bonds that is an expansionary policy. They're buying bonds. Remember, buying bonds equals big bucks. So the money supply curve will shift to the right. And when I increase the supply of money, interest rates will drop. So that's what your part 1 answer should have been. Part 2, what will be the impact on the money supply of this Fed action if the reserve requirement is 25%? Please show your work. So this is the money multiplier. Remember, it's 1 over the reserve requirement. So 1 divided by 0.25 gives me a multiplier of 4. 4 times 100 billion. This will be a $400 billion increase in the supply of money. All right. Part 3, explain what will happen in the money market if more consumers want to hold cash for possible transactions. Which curve will shift? What will happen to the interest rate? So if people decide they want to hold more currency, the demand for money will shift to the right. And if we increase the demand for holding physical currency, interest rates will go up. That's what I wanted you to explain on that one. And then part 4, this is a little different from part 2. This is if a person deposited the money and not the Fed. So part 4, what will happen to the amount of money in the banking system that can be loaned out if the reserve requirement is 25% and Sophie deposits $1,000 into her checking account? So you have to hold 25% of that in reserve, which is $250. So you're going to have the first bank will have $750 to loan out times the multiplier, because the question specifically says what will be the change in the banking system. So it's all the banks. 750 times 4 is 3,000. So there will be a $3,000 increase in money supply. Why is it only $3,000? The initial $1,000 that Sophie deposited, that's already in circulation, so you don't count that. Remember, when the Fed does it, it's all new money. If a person deposits the money, it's whatever that person deposited is already in circulation, so that's not added to the money supply. All right. So the bank will just have $3,000 to loan out. Right. So that was question number 1. Question number 2 is the loanable funds market. Using the loanable funds market below, answer the following questions. Part 1. The government has decided to reward Americans that save by lowering the taxes Americans have to pay on income earned from savings. What will happen? Explain what will happen in the loanable funds market due to this change in tax laws. Right? So if you're being rewarded for your savings, you're going to pay lower taxes on the amount of money you make from savings. The supply of loanable funds will increase. Remember, supply is savings, demand is borrowing. So people will save more since they're going to be rewarded for it. So the supply of loanable funds should increase, will shift to the right. So interest rates will drop. Okay. Part 2, due to the change in savings from part 1, what should happen to long-run growth in the United States? Remember, long-run growth is caused when there's an increase in capital. So more money in savings, lower interest rates, businesses will invest. Businesses will have an incentive to take out loans and buy new machinery, buy new capital, buy new factories. So in the long run, the economy will grow. There will be an increase in the long run growth in the United States because the businesses will increase investment because of the lower interest rates, because of the increased savings. Okay. Part 3, and this one, Someone asked me about it on an email after they'd already submitted their test. This one actually does have two answers. On the explanation I typed up that you guys could have seen when you turned it in, I only put one, but most of the time, loanable funds, some of the times, or a lot of times, there's two right answers. So number 3 here has two right answers. Explain what happens in the market below when the U.S. government is running a deficit. What happens to investment when the government is running a deficit? What I typed up in my feedback was, if the government's running a deficit, that means they're having to borrow. So the demand for loanable funds will increase, because normally a deficit means an increase in the demand for loanable funds. So the demand for loanable funds will shift to the right. Interest rates will go up. What will happen to investment? Investment will fall because the government's borrowing money. So it's crowding out. The government is crowding out business investment by running a deficit. Okay. The other right answer, the government is using all the loanable funds. You actually can say that the supply of loanable funds will decrease because the government's taking it and using it. But the rest of the answer is the same. The interest rates are still going to go up. Interest rates going up, the government is crowding out investment, so investment will fall because the government's running a deficit. So either one of those is right, as long as your explanation is right. You could say the demand went up because the government's borrowing more. You could say supply decreased because the government's using it. Both answers are right as long as you get the rest of the part, which is that investment will fall because of the higher interest rates. All right, so those were the two open response questions that I did for the retest from the banking sector. I know a lot of you asked for multiplier practice. I'll put together some more practice on the multipliers and everything else. So I do appreciate everyone saying, hey, can we get some more of this information, I will put all that together and create some more review for that. Okay. So just a reminder for tomorrow, I want you guys to work through this released exam that I put on the PowerPoint for you. See how you do compared to what everyone else in the country did, or what what other students in the country did. So the percentages are and on this year's test, there were 60 questions. They actually only scored 59 of them because they forgot to actually put the right answer for one of the questions on there. So College Board threw it out because there was no right answer. So, they make mistakes also. But so you can go through this. If you can open it up as a presentation, that way you can try to answer the question before you see the answer. That'd be good. Right? So just real quick here, just not let's see. I was just going to look at some of what people said. So ASAD, Phillips curve, aggregate demand, money multipliers, aggregate demand, Phillips curve, loanable funds, money demand, aggregate demand, loanable funds, Phillips curves, balance of payments, foreign exchange. We're not going to have to do work. I'll tell Daniel here, we don't have to worry about foreign exchange. It's not going to be on the test. That's what got thrown out. Multipliers, aggregate demand, real nominal GDP, aggregate demand, balance payments. I'll tell Charlie, that's not going to be on the test because it's from the unit they're throwing out. Comparative advantage, input output problems, we can go over that. Forex, we don't have to worry about Forex. Looks like a lot of aggregate demand, Phillips curve, and stuff like that. So I will be I'll put something together for those topics that everyone's really interested in, and get that put on there. So for tomorrow, watch over the video, see if you have any questions about the retest from the feedback. My feedback is pretty much what I just told you, except for on the loanable funds one, there are two right answers to part 3. So shout out to Purdue who answered part 3 with from the supply point of view that there'd be less supply, and sending me an email asking about it after he turned his test in. So yeah, if you did it either one of those on part 3, that is the right answer. All right. So we'll be finishing up then macro. Guys, next week I'll do the same thing with micro units 1 through 4. Okay. Actually, we're going to skip Unit 1. Unit 1 is the basic fundamentals. We just did that with macro. Unit 1 is the same for both. So for micro, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a day where it's just questions about perfect competition, a day where it's just stuff about monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, because that's in supply and demand. Those that's always been 70% of the micro test. I just really believe in them, even though they've gone to this open response. It's going to be open response questions about the market structures and supply and demand because that's what they test in micro. What got thrown out of micro was the last unit. Unit 5 got thrown out of micro. That was all the stuff dealing with externalities and tragedy of the commons and the Coase theorem, all of that. So that is all. We won't have to worry about that. So what all will be on the micro test is supply and demand and the 4 market structures. That's really, I think, what they're going to hammer on. So that's what we're going to spend our most time reviewing when we start going over micro. So I hope everyone's had a good week so far. And hey, you made it to Wednesday. So only Wednesday and Thursday left to go with assignments. And then Friday will be a catch-up day. Guys, 9:15 to 10:45, I'll be on Google Meet, and then again at 1 o'clock. So I will do another one tomorrow. I just didn't yesterday because I didn't want people to look at the quiz and then try to come ask me quiz questions or retest questions. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I know that was from the retest. Get off my screen. So that's why I just only did one yesterday. But hope everyone did well if you chose to do the retest. And I will get those. If you did do the retest, I will get it graded and I'll put the higher grade into the grade book. A lot of people have been asking me about the multiplier question that was missing. They were at school. When I finally was able to pick them up, I got to finish one more class grade. I got about half of third hour left to grade, and then I'll get those put in. So then you guys shouldn't have there shouldn't be any blanks unless you've not turned something in from our quarantine lessons, right? So hope everyone's doing well. Hope to see some of you on Google Meet at 9:15. See you guys later.